Good morning, everybody. Let's see, how we want to start? Chris, how are you today?
Doing awesome. How's it going today?
Awesome, awesome. Where did this weather come from? I woke up, it was 58 degrees outside.
I know I went to go take a walk or walk the dog, and I walked outside. I'm like, I'm gonna need a jacket. It was a little cool, but it was nice.
Very good. Well, you and I talked last night. We had a lot to talk about today. I think I first want to jump into some factuals talking. So I'm going to share my screen and find my glasses. I did a little report last night that I want to share with you all. It's bigger. There we go. And I got to tell you, I'm super impressed by this. Don't judge me by how many Excel documents I have open. It's a little bigger for everybody. All right, so this is, let me see. I was talking to one of our managers yesterday who said, man, we had a good month. And I said, whoa, the good month we just had is a result of what? A good January, February, and 2 weeks of March. So we need to see the open business in April compared to what we did April last year to see where we really are. So here's a little lesson. So open sides, in 2019, the Apollo Beach office did 89 open sides. We did 64 in April. That's a 28% decline, 25 fewer sales. Okay. Now there's always, and you can't balance this out. I'm not making excuses. I'm just explaining. There were deals written in April that y'all haven't turned in yet.
Yep.
But in April of last year, the same thing happened.
Well, how many deals how many do you still have that are pending to close from April? There's probably still 5 to 7 from April that are pending.
Just for Apollo Beach, there's probably more like 25.
Yeah.
That'll hopefully roll over. The Brandon office, look at this, 26 sides in April this year, 26 sides in April last year. Brandon has seen no decline in the number of unit sales. That's incredible.
Way to go.
Indian Rocks Beach actually has more contracts in April of 2020 than they did in April 2019. So let's make a blanket statement about the market. Is the market good? Is the market bad? Your question or your answer should be, which market are you talking about?
Yeah.
Madeira Beach went down 35%. Sarasota went up 6.7%. South Tampa went down and open business 60%. But something happened in April of 2019, 96 sales for South Tampa. That's a ton. I mean, that was a banner month. So I got to look more into that one. And then Sun City Center went down 71%. Sun City Center got hit really hard because there's more elderly people there.
Yeah.
They're just not as into real estate now. So that's a challenge. And then I said, okay, but where are we on listings? Because listings are kind of the name of the game. We need to make sure that we're bringing the inventory, because if we're going to participate and enjoy the surge that's coming, the key is going to be listings. And I'm going to talk about some of those things before we get into our contract stuff. So Apollo Beach took 4 fewer listings in April this year than we did April last year. Guys, that's incredible, because we had a virtual shutdown for 2 weeks in March. Had this not happened, we would have just been growing like crazy. And that's why we and everybody I'm talking to thinks the same thing. The surge is coming when some normalcy gets back.
Yeah.
And that's going to take, the cases dropping, which I'm starting to see on the things I'm looking at. Brandon took 1 more listing than they did in April of last year. Thomas, you're doing a great job, dude. Indian Rocks Beach took 3 more listings, 2 more. Madeira Beach tied, no change in Madeira Beach. Is this impressive to anybody other than me? I think I was expecting doom and gloom.
Yeah.
More listings. Sarasota took more listings than they did in April of last year. South Tampa took half of the listings took last year. Sun City took 2/3 less. But once again, that's a different market. And then I put in blue down here. This is the entire company. We did 38% fewer contracts and 26% fewer listings taken. So all in all, I don't want to sound Pollyanna, but this is great. I did listen into parts of the, what's it called, Rule the Recovery.
Yeah.
thing Century 21 did yesterday. I don't know if you guys are aware, but we've got sister companies around the country that are not essential. They're not allowed to show houses. They're not allowed to make listing presentations, and they're still doing it virtually, listing houses and showing houses, writing contracts. And then there's some parts, so like what do they say, Albuquerque, their business is down like 2 or 3%. New York is down like 80%. So it's just crazy out there. But this was good news today. So congratulations to everybody. That makes it work. We can function like that. We're not going to be profitable, but we can handle it. And if we continue, if May shapes up better than this, you're going to watch some really cool things happen. All right. I want to share just a couple things before we get into this. I just like to validate's the word I want to say, that what we're asking you to do works. So I pay a lot of attention to a lot of Century 21. So I got some Century 21 leadership friends, Greg Harrelson, Adam Oberski, all these guys are doing classes with Mike Meadler. And I'd like to watch them and see what they're doing. And we're all doing pretty much the same thing. But these are just some ideas. So we had a panelist yesterday of 5 Centurion agents or double Centurion agents asking what they do with their business. And here's just some of the stuff they wrote down. A lot of Facebook users, buying Facebook ads, doing all the stuff Mike's talking about doing. A lot of people were talking about building Facebook groups for their farm and then becoming the leader of that Facebook group and consciously driving content to it that's relevant to the neighborhood, and how that grows over time when you're consistent and all the things we've been talking about. Video texting is like, one guy was just all over. I'm video texting FSBOs and expireds. There's nothing new out there, guys. It's FSBOs and expireds to get your listings. How many FSBOs are you talking to? How many expireds are you talking to? Everything was work your database, work your database, work your database. Well, what if you're a new agent and you don't have a database? Then your mission is to add 5 people a day to your database, right? This is all the stuff we've been talking about, that just to remind you, maybe you can pick up some of this stuff. If you don't have any listings, socially market your office's sold listings, right? If you need something to post, my God, just look at our sales board and pick a listing and say, look what just sold, and put your name on it.
On that note, a lot of people I know are hesitant because the way Zap works, it doesn't always tie back to you. So I can understand that. But if you didn't realize, in Business Builder, there's a link in Business Builder to my website. And when you click on my website, it goes to, you have a Business Builder website as well. That's not your Zap website. You can go to this Business Builder website and search for a home that you pull from one of our lists of just listed or just sold, and market that home as just listed or just sold. Copy and paste the link into Facebook. You will be the agent that's listed there every time. I've tried it. I've worked with it. I've had other agents do it, and we always follow up with it. And when we click on that link, it always goes back to you, the agent. It will not go anywhere else. So that's one way that you can market and share those listings. And that's one thing I've had some feedback from. People were saying, well, where do I do that? I can't do it in Zap. Business Builder has a website. Click on my website in the top right of the page and go search for a listing and market, copy and paste the link to Facebook.
Cool. And it doesn't have to be a link. It can be a static image too. Just look what sold.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get a little creative. And Mike showed you how to use Canva and all that stuff we got. They said now, this is a great time to organize your database. And a lot of them chimed in and talked about database, my database. Everybody I meet, at the end of the day, I put in my database, and then I put them on a campaign. So a lot of these people, and I'm not kidding you, I mean, of course, it was a Century 21 call. They were loving Business Builder. They were loving Zap. And you guys, I'm not lying. You can go watch these things. I'm pretty sure they're recorded. Business Builder, and there's a recording in Century 21 University if you want to learn more about this. I'm just presuming you have a little more time now to do stuff, and I'm trying to help you fill your time with things that might help you grow your business. So if you go to century21university.com, you'll find recordings on how to use Business Builder the right way. Because here's what we're realizing. The tools don't not work. We don't know how to use the tools, right? So that was pretty evident to me today. Toolkit CMA has a ton of value in it. Your Real Satisfied surveys, they were just all over their reviews. They're getting Realtor.com reviews too. They're getting Zillow reviews too. This is all the stuff. I know it's a lot, but just pile it on, pile it on. You don't have to do it all, but just if you see an opportunity.
Well, you saw the email that the most recent Real Satisfied emails that Angelique is sending out. She's got different steps on what to do with Real Satisfied. If you haven't gone in there yet, if you haven't set it up, if you haven't requested a Zillow review, she took that, and now all of the Real Satisfied review emails, you have a new testimonial. It sits there and walks through exactly where it'll be, how to do what, how to get a Zillow review, where to go into Real Satisfied if you want to monopolize on that and take that and do more with it. It's all in the beginning part of that email.
I talked with Angelique yesterday, and she is recreating our onboarding program. And I said, why don't we do an onboarding Zoom meeting one morning? And let's take everybody who hasn't been through the new process and make sure they have taking advantage of the tools, because we have tools and we've gotten away from using them because we got busy doing other things. But there's some automatic stuff that just happens that I think it might be educational to sit through that. Anybody have any content on that? Any suggestions? Oh, somebody was asking me the other day, what is this BE3 stuff? What are you guys doing? What is BE3? What is BE3? All right, it's called marketing. BE is Beggins Enterprises, right? B for Beggins, E for Enterprises. E to the third power, E3, is empower, educate, and encourage. So we just think that's kind of a cool concept. BE3, Beggins Enterprises, we empower, educate, and encourage. So our job as management is to empower, educate, and encourage the agents to do what they do, which is why a lot of our messages are like they are. And then your job is to empower, educate, and encourage the buyers and sellers, which is really what we do. When you think about it, because we don't really sell anything but ourselves. So we're empowering them, we're educating them, and we're encouraging them. So that's what BE3 is. So let's talk about that. Cool. All right, Chris. Any comments on the Happy Agent podcast? We did 2 more yesterday. We're going to keep doing a couple of these a week. If you guys like any of that, let me know. I'll get some comments in here. You'd enjoy the onboarding refresher. Good, Brian. Good idea to review our tools. Beggins Theory empowers a toolbox, also a call mathematical expression.
I think that would be kind of, if we can get something like once a quarter Zoom onboarding meeting, like you do it individually, but once a quarter, somebody, either Angelique, Susie, somebody gets on and just does a brief onboarding meeting for 30, 45 minutes as a reminder. That might be something, or to introduce new things. It might be cool to get some people re-engaged.
Well, what's cool is by doing the Zap, I can just find anybody, make them a co-host, and boom, we're right there, and they can share their screens and do everything. And it's really got some pretty cool, efficiencies, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I thought, Chris and I talked last night, I think we wanted to talk about a few things. I was a little nervous yesterday, not nervous, reading all the stuff when you reopen that you're responsible for doing that we talked about yesterday. You know, wiping down offices and all. It's just a pain in the ass. And then I'm thinking, oh, a lot of the people on the panel yesterday said they're making it a point to be responsible and respectful. So they're always carrying sanitizer, they're carrying wipes, they're wearing face masks. And I never really thought about it this way, but it's being respectful and responsible. And then they're talking about making sure when the seller leaves the house, all the lights are on, so nobody else has to go touch the light switches. So all that protocol was coming out and they were doing it. So I thought we should look at some of this. And FAR came out with a form for us, which I need to look at. Yep. So we're going to look at the in-person access acknowledgement form. I believe is this one. No, we're going to talk about that one too. Maybe it's this one. Yes, the in-person access acknowledgement. So I think Tony Rita picked up on this yesterday. NAR put out those really onerous guidelines yesterday, which has now set the standard that, hey, we told you what to do, and now somebody can blame us for not having done it. So this is a counter, this is legal shit, that's stupid, but this is a counter to that. So we're going to recommend that you have a buyer and seller and cooperating broker acknowledge that they're entering this premises on their own accord. And it's basically hold harmless. So I've been talking, Chris, why don't you read the concept?
Sure, yeah. It basically goes along the same lines as what Century 21, NAR, and every other large company is putting out there. And it's basically just let them know the owner prospect named above acknowledges they are aware of the national emergency caused by the coronavirus pandemic and the evolving nature of the health crisis, including the danger of community spread and risk posed to the health of those who contract COVID-19 coronavirus. In pursuit of owner's objective to sell, lease the property, and prospect's objective to purchase, lease the property as safely as possible, owner and prospect, as applicable, confirm the following. And they're just going to go on and they're going to list off a lot of the same things we've already seen. You know, when you're doing this, you're going to do all these things to be healthier. You're going to try not to touch you're going to touch as little as possible. That you specifically requested to see the property. We're not forcing you to see this property. And it, goes on to state all of those things. And this is really, we have been advised, and it's our duty to advise the people we're working with that. You ever known anybody that hasn't watched TV or doesn't really watch, Craig, you don't, doesn't really listen to the news, doesn't really go on the internet? They may not know all the things that are going on, but they still do buy homes, sell homes. And it's our job to make sure that everybody's safe and held accountable. And that's what this form is just calling it out for.
Prospect owner agrees in all respects to comply with the most current version of the Center for Disease Control guidelines when accessing properties and will not obligate agent broker to violate any applicable laws or orders, CDC guidance, or otherwise compromise the safety of the agent or broker or the public to access properties. By signing this form, owner signature, prospect signature, prospect signature. I think they should have put something in for cooperating broker.
Well, that's what they do. We're putting it to the cooperating broker and having them have their prospect sign it. So this form is being given to the cooperating broker and asking them to give it to their prospect for whatever and having them to sign it. So I think we could put this in as a, send it to anybody who shows the property.
So I guess best practice for us would be on a listing presentation, include this, have the seller sign it, attach it to the MLS as an attachment. So it's there for the broker.
Yeah. Don,
and then we got to police the collection of it.
Don said, can you add the verbiage? Let's see, can you add the cooperating broker language in realtor remarks? Absolutely. I would definitely say to do that. I would talk to the seller about everything that you're going to do. Like we just said, when your home is being shown, leave all the lights on, open all of the doors, leave a sign on the front, put a box of wipes or a bottle of hand sanitizer somewhere near the front door, put a little note that says, please remove your shoes, use the hand sanitizer and wipes if you touch anything, and you'll let them know to do that. And we can put in realtor remarks that please abide by the guidelines that the owner posts on the front door, remove shoes, don't touch this, do that. And then also put it in your showing time remarks. If you're using showing time, there's a whole section for that.
So a lot of times you just need to have answers. So some of your sellers are going to be very, very, very reluctant to let people in their house. Some people are not going to care. There's a full spectrum of things that are happening the way this is. Deborah posted that maybe we should, everyone who comes in the office to sign the forms too. I think it's a great idea. If you come in the office, hey, guys, look, we're fine doing it. We're going to wear our masks. We're going to wash our hands. We're going to ride in separate cars. We're going to stay 6 feet apart from each other. And as long as we don't touch a bunch of stuff, we should be fine. I mean, there really should be no fear there, but there it is. Jackie said she showed 3 homes yesterday and 3 different agents had her sign a hold harmless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to think there's states, like you said, I know Pennsylvania, the real estate is shut down. There is no buying, there is no selling. The market is basically closed. They're putting things on the market and you could still call about stuff, but there's no showings. There's no active marketing in person of properties like that. So, there's people that see that and they wonder why we're doing what we're doing. How can you do that? This is just something that we just add in there that's showing that we're taking proper precautions. We're doing the things that we can. These are the guidelines provided to us and we're following them.
Yeah. And that's what we should do. And it's the smart thing to do too. We got to make sure people are aware, and it is a litigious society and people would, Thomas said agents provide shoe or boot covers. Yes. Hey, one of Kim Hodgkin's customers in Mirror Bay has a whole bunch of that H95 face masks, and they were 3 for $10 or something. Susie has all the information. So if you guys want to buy face masks, I mean, I think you could use the same one over and over again. Really, I got one in my truck, and if I go to the grocery store, I put it on, and then I take it off, leave it in my truck, and I go back, and 3 days later, I put it back on, and I take it back off. So if you need those, let me know. I can connect you, or Kim Hodgkin's neighbor does that. Yeah, that's a good point, Lauren. She said hand sanitizer, well, boxes of disposable gloves, and shoe covers at the doors. Deborah says Ace Harbor has face masks. Another one in Sun City, Deb? Cool. All right, you guys clear on this? It's not very complicated. It just says, hey, you recognize there's risks, and we're going to protect all of ourselves.
Yep.
So, okay. And then for fun, I don't know if we really dove into this one, but it happens every day. I'm getting calls from our agents saying, oh my God, they're doing this, that, and the other, and they want to extend because of this. And now you're going to have a lot of mortgage extensions. And the mortgage extensions are a mess because banks are just scared. What did they shut down yesterday? They raised credit limits on FHA and VA. Oh, we're going to talk about that today too, Chris.
Yeah.
But let's jump into this first. So my position has been and will continue to be, do everything you can to extend a contract rather than cancel it, right? There was a period of time that the buyers thought this is the best house for them. They hired inspections, they invested money, they want the house. A lot of people are scared. I'm in the middle of a refinance of my own home. I've got a HELOC. My HELOC has to be subordinated to my first. They have had it since the 13th of April. They have a 5 to 7 day turnaround period. They just wrote me yesterday and said, you missed something back on May 1st. Now our time is 10 to 14 days. So you're just gonna see delays, anticipate it, can talk to people about it. Don't make them be shocked. It's a frightening market. Rather, it's a frightened market. So you're going to see delays. The smart thing to do is talk about them, prepare the consumer. Hey, be prepared. It's a frightened market and changes are happening every day. So closing date, buyer and seller agree to extend the closing date for an additional blank days until, let's start at the top. The clauses below will be incorporated into the contract between buyer and seller. The coronavirus pandemic may cause unprecedented impacts to real estate transactions, including, but not limited to travel restrictions, self-imposed and or government required isolations, potential closures of offices and institutions required to fund, close, and record real estate transactions, and actions or inactions of homeowners or condominium associations. I mean, what if somebody really did contract the virus and they got diagnosed and they got into a self-quarantine? You have to stay home for 14 days. What are you going to do? Kill the deal? Extend it for 14 days?
I think it's a good thing to use this addendum rather than just writing a blank addendum like you normally would, just because this is calling out the situation, and if it's showing your intent behind what you're doing. You're not just extending because of some random problem. You're extending because there are these extenuating circumstances going on in the market that's causing these delays, causing these problems that aren't covered by the contract, and you want to make sure you're calling that out. If there ever comes down to a point where there's a question of buyers, using diligent effort and good faith, you're like, no, we put this out. This wasn't us. This is what was going on in the market, and you're calling this point out rather than just saying, I need an extension or we need to extend closing. It's trying to make things a little more clearly and just give protection to everybody.
Yep. So these are the tools. Somebody just said, where do you get shoe covers? I would say Amazon would be my and it'll be here in 2 days. Actually, Amazon's been taking longer than 2 days, but then things have been showing up early. It's kind of cool. We just cleared underwriting, and the new score requirement by the lender as of yesterday is 700 and above. Thankfully, our scores are crazy. Jimmy, you talked about QR codes the other day.
Yeah, he's using the QR codes for feature sheets and all different like surveys. Instead of leaving a binder on the counter that everybody's going to be grabbing, moving, turning pages, he's basically putting out a flyer or two that has QR codes on them, and it says, scan this for a survey, scan this to see the feature sheet, scan this to see this to see all the utility bills and insurance bills and everything. And you just hold your phone camera up to it, and it pulls a link up, and you click on the link, and it goes to the document, so you can see all of it on your phone without having to touch anything.
That's really slick.
And it's something really cool to do too. If you have a home that's really, really feature rich, you can create a QR code that you can, put somewhere in that room or in the kitchen or wherever those amazing features are, and just call it out that they could scan that, and it'll have a list of all of the really cool things about that room, about that home, about the insulation, about the wiring, or whatever else they've added to it.
Well, that presumes the consumer knows how to use a QR code, but most of them do, I would think. If not, their realtor should. And the realtor can scan it and say, look at this, look at this. That's pretty slick. I like it. Jan says, how does one create a QR code? You go to your app store on your phone and look up QR code scanner, and you download that app, which will be free. And then you take your phone. It's going to ask you to open your camera permission. So you point your camera at the QR code, take a picture. It's going to take you straight to a website.
Well, Diane put a chat in that's worth talking about here. She said, I was just asked to extend the COVID-19 addendum another 2 weeks. I have a backup offer and maybe another one. So what?
Okay, at that point, that's why you get backups.
Exactly.
I mean, options.
That puts your seller is now in the driver's seat. So you have the ability to decide what is the best position for your seller to be in. Is it the offer that you currently have? Is it the backup offer that's there that may take a little longer to close? I mean, those are things we have to figure out.
So let's talk about that for a second, because Diane and I did talk about this. The backup offer, hypothetically, is lower than the accepted offer. Can the seller take it?
Absolutely.
100%. It has to be an offer acceptable to the seller. It doesn't have to be higher.
Yeah, nothing that has to be better. It could be a worse offer, but if they think it's better for them at the moment, the whole entire offer could be worse, but it makes it more sense to them to accept it.
Yep. Cool. Okay, Chris, we also wanted to dive into, well, I wanted to bring up the clear cooperation policy. You all remember the clear cooperation policy? That basically says there's no public marketing of a listing unless it's in the MLS. We got a report yesterday. Somebody self-reported, one of our agents, who had a coming soon listing on a new home construction. Weird situation. And the agent was fined $500. Now we're going to argue, because new construction was considered not included in that. But this isn't really new construction. It's not a tear down. It's going to be a total remodel. But our agent put a coming soon sign in the yard, and another agent reported her, and $500 fine. Right? So what is public marketing?
Including but not limited to pretty much everything. Anything you could possibly think you're going to try and do to show this property to people online, in person, with a flyer. Anything like that, it could be considered public marketing.
You put a flyer in the pizza shop, you're public marketing.
Yep.
And here's what I want you to think about this is the purpose. Buyer Joe sees the flyer in the pizza window. Buyer Joe is working with Amy agent. Buyer Joe is loyal to Amy agent. Buyer Joe says, hey, Amy agent, I want to see that house I saw on the flyer in the pizza shop. Amy agent goes to MLS, looks up the address, and it's not there. And now she looks like an incompetent realtor because she can't find the property, right? So Amy agent reports it to the board, $500 fine. Public
here's what I've seen a lot of people are doing, because the rule states that any public marketing of a listing or of a property that comes out, the listing has to go into MLS within 24 hours of that. That would be basically the 1 day of the public marketing, not one business day, 1 day, like 24 hours. That's got to go in. So a lot of agents are posting their coming soons on Facebook and Instagram. I've seen a lot of them, and then they're putting it up, and then it goes into MLS the next day. That's still acceptable. It's still, I've literally probably fielded about 5 phone calls in a matter of a week. Hey, is this person allowed to do this? And some of our agents have done it too, and we've chatted with them, and it's fine to do that as long as you know that listings is going to put it in the very next day. But you probably don't want to take that chance when you don't have that control over when it's going to go in. But there are people that are doing that. That is acceptable. They can put it up there, coming soon, will be live tomorrow, or whatever that is, as long as it goes in the very next day.
But let's talk about that for a conceptual thing for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mean to share my screen. Either you believe this or you don't. The MLS adds value to your seller's contract,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you expose a property to the competitive bidding environment, you have a better shot of getting more money for the seller. So basically, when an agent's trying to self-promote, they're trying to double-side it, which is preventing the bigger market of seeing it, which is jeopardizing the value of our seller. Now, when you think that we're playing the single agent game, you cannot put your interests above your clients. So my question goes and becomes, why would you not put it on the MLS as soon as possible, right? I mean, I get we want to get our own buyer leads and stuff, but it's a hot market and you have to go to the source. And your job is to represent the seller, especially as a single agent. So I don't mean to sound like a wimp, but it's not all about you.
Yeah, and the MLS definitely adds value. We've all seen properties, because the argument sometimes is, well, the offer was a full price offer if they accept it before it actually gets on MLS within that day. We gave them a full price offer. We got them what they wanted. But what's to say it wasn't going to go on the market and get multiple offers and sell for above asking price? And then the argument is, oh, that would never happen. It would never appraise. But we've all seen the properties that sell for way more than we think they would and appraise for more than we think they would, and vice versa. So we don't know. We don't have that crystal ball, but we have to put their interests first. And that's the one way to do that, is to make sure it gets marketed to the most amount of people.
Yeah. So that's really my question, is why wouldn't you put it on the MLS? And the answer is because I want to be selfish and try to sell it myself and prevent my seller from getting exposed to a competitive bidding environment. That's not a good answer as a single agent. Mm-hmm. The liability and responsibility of being a single agent. All right. I'm going to share again. We're going to go to .loop. We're going to find the FHA VA addendum because there's some really important things that are changing in here. I can click on my button right.
It'd be in the addendum and disclosures, or all documents.
Okay, so what's the minimum credit level now for FHA?
It was 680. I've seen some at 700. I've seen them kind of across the board, but most of them are going to about 700.
That's what I'm hearing.
And it's pretty crazy. Typically, FHA is a lower interest rate than a conventional loan, and right now it's flip-flop for the most part. Most lenders, the FHA interest rates are higher than the conventional.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to consider it's a higher risk loan for a lender. It's a lower down payment. They allow lower credit scores. They allow higher debt to income ratios. It's a much greater risk for a lender. And when they feel like they're taking a lot of risk already because of the current temperature of the market or the global economy, they're going to put some limitations on the amount of risk of the things they can control, which is the buyers they're going to accept. It sucks. It's not great. It's not the best thing for our buyers, but hey, it is what it is. We've got to make sure that we're abiding by those guidelines.
Well, I mean, think about you being the lender. How many people are getting laid off?
Yeah.
Well, a lot. Now we got variable verification of employment 3 days before closing and the day of closing.
Yep.
Because too many people are losing their jobs. We got our payroll protection plan money, which is going to cover our shortages for the next 2.5 months. But if things don't get better in 2.5 months, we don't have choices. We have to make changes. So, and the banks know this, they're not stupid. So you just got to be aware.
Yeah.
Kathleen said VA 700 and above. Also, agents watch out for appraisal waivers in D.R. Horton contracts. Yeah, most new home contracts have appraisal waivers. We don't care what the appraiser thinks our house is worth. We know what it costs to build. We know you upgraded in it. This is your upgrade. You pay them. Jessica said, where can we find hand sanitizer to put at our door of our listing or disposable gloves? We should put a small trash can out as well. That's the challenge. I'll tell you, I went to the grocery store and bought paper towels the other day. First time I've seen paper towels in the grocery store, and they weren't the big rolls. They were the little rolls, but I got some. So I assume the grocery stores are going to get more of this stuff now. Just don't hoard it, you know. That's crazy. All right, so here we are, FHA addendum. Chris, you said we got a lot of challenges with this, so I'll let you pick out the ones you want to cover.
Yeah, the challenges that we see, there's a couple things. I just spoke with an agent the other day on line number 2 or section 2, inspections and appraisals. So the challenges we end up seeing with this, in addition to the requirements of paragraph 12 of this contract, notice it says in addition to the requirements of paragraph 12, that assumes that if it's a as is or a contract with repair limits. So in addition, the seller shall comply with the applicable FHA or VA regulations regarding termite inspection, roof inspection, and appraisal repairs, collectively appraisal repairs. The cost to seller for appraisal repair shall not exceed X dollars, which cost is in addition to the cost required to be paid under paragraph 9A and 12B, C, and D. So these costs, these potential appraisal costs, are in addition to whatever repair costs could be called out in the contract. They're not in correlation with, they're in addition to. So that's an important difference. I see a lot of people, and well, slow down a second. What does it mean by appraisal repairs? Typically, the appraisal repairs are going to be anything noted by the appraiser as subject to the value, meaning this value is subject to this being done, subject to this safety.
The soffits being repainted, the front door being repainted, the
roof being replaced if it's of greater age than it needs to be, windows being repaired because of cracked windows. So those are things that are typically noted. But if you go back and read, seller shall comply with applicable FHA or VA regulations regarding termite inspection, roof inspection, and appraisal repairs. So the termite report and termite inspection is subject to this amount that's here as well, even in an as-is contract, because any addendum that's added overwrites and supersedes what's written in the contract. The contract could say it's as is, but this addendum now calls in and says the seller shall comply with any regulations regarding a termite inspection. And for a VA borrower, a clean WDO report is going to be required for getting an approval. So the seller would be obliged to have to fix anything related to that WDO up to whatever dollar amount you put in that into that line right there for appraisal repairs.
But Chris, it's an as-is contract.
Yeah, that's all fine and dandy. As is great. The contract is as is, but when you added this addendum now became page 13 and 14 of the contract, and anything that's written or added supersedes whatever is already pre-printed in the contract. So your seller, by accepting this, is changing the terms of an as-is contract per se. If you write anything in for appraisal repairs, the collective appraisal repairs, meaning anything marked subject to, or anything found on the WDO, or anything on a roof inspection that would be an issue for a VA or FHA borrower to obtain a loan approval. That's what that says. It calls it out right there.
And to help you explain this to a customer, let's talk about the difference. So there's really no banks giving money, right? Banks are lending money for a period of time, and then they sell the loan that they wrote to a fund, right? And in order for that loan to be sold on the secondary market, it has to have a 20% equity position, or it's not a marketable security. So a conventional loan has 20% down. It's all good. The lender issues the loan, and then they sell the loan often in a bundle of packages, right? FHA and VA, as you know, are no money down and 3.5% down. So those mortgages are not qualified to be sold on the secondary market because there's not enough equity in it. So the Veterans Administration guarantees the gap of the 0 to 80%, the 20% gap. The VA guarantees that if that lender forecloses, the VA is going to cover the 20%. And FHA insures the gap. So VA guarantees it, FHA insures it. That's why there's an FHA fee. So the insurance covers the gap so that that loan can be sold on the secondary market. So since that's the case, VA and FHA have an interest in the property, right? Because they're guaranteeing it or insuring it. So they feel they have the right to say, if we're going to invest in this property with you, we want to make sure these basic things are in good condition, which is why we send our own VA appraiser out and FHA inspector out, because they're working to protect FHA and VA. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely. And also considering that this dollar amount that you write in here has nothing to do with the inspection that your buyer gets. I see a lot of agents on both sides, whether it's on the buyer side or the seller side, saying, well, there's $500 on the FHA addendum. Just go ahead and use that to fix whatever they're asking to get done, to put a new range in or to fix the window or to whatever it is. Just use that dollar amount there. That's not the case. They don't correlate. They are completely separate. In addition to whatever is here, the FHA and VA addendum adds on to that, but they do not correlate together unless it is something that will become a FHA or VA regulation regarding termite, roof inspection, or the appraisal repairs. So typically it's either going to be the WDO report or the actual appraisal that's going to call for those repairs, not your inspector that says that this is broken, that's broken, and you want to ask for some repairs on an as-is contract. This isn't a repair limit for that. It's completely separate.
Yeah, think of the appraiser as a secondary inspector, because what the appraiser says needs is what you have to do within the limit of this box. So I think it's really important that you have a listing and you get an as-is contract with a VA rider. You better explain to the seller that you may have to make repairs because this buyer is going FHA or VA.
Yeah.
Right? You may have to. And that's just good agenting. So I hope you just put a circle around that and say, oh, that's right. FHA overrides as is. We can make repairs.
Yep. And then, the next section for FHA and FHA financing, I think it's just important to note that, it is expressly agreed that notwithstanding any other provision of this contract. That's a very powerful term. That very powerful term means regardless of whatever else this contract says, the purchaser basically has all the rights. That's what the rest of it starts to say if there's an appraisal issue. So regardless of whatever else the provisions of this contract state, the purchaser shall not be obligated to complete this purchase if the property does not appraise for whatever dollar amount that's put into that place right there. So that's very important to understand. The buyer has all of the rights. The other thing it doesn't say in here, it does not go in and say how long the buyer has to tell the seller after the appraised value comes in. It doesn't say they have to notify them within any specific amount of time in that. It does say down here about appraisal repairs, how long they have to tell them, but not how long they have to cancel the contract because of an appraisal that's not satisfactory. So,
which is why I want you to have your loan approval period about at least 10 days prior to closing.
yes.
That would force them to tell you within the loan approval period in the absence of anything.
No, that's not correct, because the contract says that even if the buyer has obtained loan approval or has deemed to have obtained loan approval and the contract does not close, the seller shall get the deposit unless it's for one of three reasons. And the third reason is if the appraisal obtained by the buyer's lender does not meet the terms of the loan approval. They're still protected. The provision in the financing contingency says if the appraisal obtained by the buyer's lender does not meet the terms of the loan approval, the buyer shall be refunded their deposit and released from any further obligation. It doesn't say it doesn't say it has to be FHA, VA, anything. It just says if the appraisal does not meet terms of the loan approval, even if they've already had loan approval obtained or deemed to have been obtained.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the crazy part with appraisals. So, you also see a lot of people, I see this all the time. They have an FHA rider and then they write into additional terms. This contract is contingent upon appraisal coming in at purchase price, or they add an appraisal contingency. You don't need it. You're adding conflicting documents, conflicting verbiage. You don't need it. The only thing that you may want to add is to request or put in there that the appraisal shall be completed by a certain time. You can put that into additional terms, but this still says it is agreed that regardless of whatever else this contract says, the purchaser shall not be obligated to move forward. So that's where it gets conflicting. You wrote something else in. Well, handwritten terms supersede the contract. This contract says regardless of whatever else this contract says, this will prevail. So it becomes gray. All we're doing is creating muddy water. Let's let the addenda do what the addenda are supposed to do and protect our buyers and sellers.
Yep. VA financing?
Yep. VA basically says this. It says the same thing, except there's no dollar amount. It just says, in FHA, you have to put in whatever amount. You could put in a lower amount for an FHA purchase if you wanted. If your buyer knew, if they wanted to say, hey, let's put in, I don't mind if the appraisal comes in short, I love this house, I want it, I'll pay a little more for it, you could do that. But in VA, it says, it is expressly agreed that notwithstanding any other provision, the purchaser shall not incur any penalty or forfeiture of money or otherwise be obligated to complete the purchase if the contract purchase price exceeds reasonable value of the property. So if it does not appraise, then the buyer has all of the rights. Again, all of the rights. They could do whatever they would like. And then the fees and prepayments, the seller shall pay for the WDO inspection and tax service, underwriting and document prep fees required by the lender. So the seller is going to be paying additional fees here that are required by the lender or recording fees for assigning a purchaser's mortgage.
So what should an agent do?
I've seen people cross that out if they want to. You want to make sure that everybody's aware. Mr. Seller, there are additional fees you're going to have to pay to the tune of probably in the realm of about $100 more that you're going to be paying towards a WDO inspection and potential tax services or underwriting doc prep fees. So you tell your seller.
Well, I've seen doc prep fees at $795.
Correct.
Underwriting fees.
Yep.
Yeah. My point was call the buyer's lender.
Oh, yeah.
Say, what are the VA non-allowables? They're called VA non-allowables.
Yep. You want to find out what those are. You can write into additional terms that it'll be capped. The seller shall not pay any more than X for that. I've seen people cross that out, and sellers agents cross that out and say the seller's not paying those. And then it's a VA non-allowable. Well, then who pays it? Typically, the lender would have to eat some of those fees or be willing to give a credit for some of those too. So the appraisal repairs are the same in both. Basically, it says if the appraisal repairs exceed the limit, then within 3 days after receiving notice of the excess cost, give the purchaser written notice of the seller's intent to pay some, all, or none of the costs. So it's the same kind of thing. It basically says within 3 days of notifying of those appraisal repairs, the seller has to tell us what they're going to do with those appraisal repairs if they're in excess of what the appraisal repair amount was. And that's basically it. I just think there's just some important content in here and it just gets overlooked. We just kind of throw some numbers in here and check some boxes, and we don't fully understand what the rights and obligations are of a buyer and a seller. So just make sure you're understanding that. Amy had chimed in and said that the WDO line had got a seller to make WDO repairs, and he was saying no before that. We're like, well, no, the contract says you have to, and he ended up making those repairs. Vicky asked, can you order appraisal earlier even though they have not been approved? Absolutely. You can ask your lender to do anything that they want. They can order an appraisal at any time once they have a file created and they put it into underwriting and they have a file number for it. Once they do that, they can order the appraisal at any time. Their typical process is, I want to get my buyer's application. I want to put their full application and contract into underwriting. I want to get a conditional approval from the underwriter, and I want to verify that the property meets the satisfaction of the buyer, and the buyer will be moving forward with the contract so that they don't make the buyer pay for an appraisal when they didn't get approved for the loan, or they're going to cancel the contract because the inspection was really bad. So they usually wait for those times to do it just as a protection to the buyer so they don't pay costs they don't need to. But you can order it whenever you want. I've had the last two purchases I've made, I had my file put into underwriting, and as soon as it went into underwriting, they were both newer homes. I wasn't concerned with it. I ordered the appraisal and had the appraisal done, and we had everything cleared in about 9 or 10 days because they processed as soon as they received everything rather than processing according to a specific closing date. So you can do that. It's just a matter of having the lender on board with you. What is the amount most people are putting in for repairs on this addendum? I'm usually telling people $500 is a pretty reasonable amount for appraisal repairs, $500 to $1,000. It really depends on the house too. So, and it depends on how you're planning on presenting the offer and how you want the offer to look. You have to understand this is if you write an as-is contract and you put dollar amounts in there, now it's no longer an as-is contract per se. You're obligating a seller to pay some dollar amount, so it could have an effect on your offer. So typically between $500 and $1,000 is a reasonable amount and will usually get you accepted. But if you are noting issues that are there, like if you call it out to the seller's agent as a buyer's agent and say, well, we know that we can see that, I've seen this potentially before, which is why we put $1,500 or $2,000 on that line, and see if you can get them to agree to it. It's just kind of calling things out and trying to be proactive rather than reactive when the appraisal comes in.
Which is why I like certified pre-loved homes before you put them on the market, get them inspected so you can find out how old the roof really is.
Yep.
Chris, the last thing we had on our list was seller's disclosure, page 5, some changes that are going on within that.
Yes. Yeah. So the seller's disclosure, we all know, is the seller's duty and obligation to disclose anything they know that materially affects the value of the property that's not readily observable. And we have them fill that form out as a CYA for everybody, for us, the seller, the buyer's agent, and the buyer. We're having them fill that out. The law doesn't say they have to fill the form out. The law just says they have to make the disclosures. And the way we get them to do that is by filling that form out. But if something comes up during the contract that is in direct opposal of what the seller's disclosure says, we need to make the proper disclosure and make sure that all parties are made aware. And page 5 of the seller's disclosure states at the top that basically it says the minute that the seller becomes made aware of an issue on this disclosure, you will use page 5 to update that and disclose to all parties, have them all sign that, and have them all sign the seller's disclosure so that you can complete your disclosure and make sure that everybody is acknowledging the change that was there. Let me pull them. Where? That's not there.
It's got seller non-occupancy, seller occupancy, seller's property disclosure for a condo.
I guess it's not an addendum to the contract. It's really not, I guess.
Absolutely.
So go to all documents.
What I like to do is go to Florida Interactive Forms, because that's got all FAR forms.
That's a separate form, just
an update.
Property.
That's page 5.
So this form, technically, it says if the information set forth in a previously provided disclosure statement becomes inaccurate or incorrect, you must promptly notify buyer. Use the space below to make corrections and provide additional information if necessary. Then acknowledge that the information is accurate as of the date signed below. So if something, we've had this a couple times. We had a contract, buyer did an inspection. They found that there was a septic on the property and the owner disclosed it was on a sewer. Well, I believe it was on sewer, but there was a previous septic tank that was there that wasn't in use. Well, we took this form, added in there that there is a septic tank on the property, had everybody sign it and disclosed it. So at that point, who has what rights? Because this form isn't contractual. So what right does the buyer have if they're buying a property and they weren't disclosed of something? What's your feedback on that?
I would say whenever I get in a situation like that, I say, had I known this, I wouldn't have done that. If those words are going to come out in a court of law, you're probably going to lose. So if I don't want a septic tank on my property and you didn't tell me there was one, and after I'm under contract, you tell me there is one, then I think I have the right to cancel.
Sure. Yep. And That's typically what, the feedback that we're hearing. So, we had another one where there was a shared well, and, we found that out after the inspections, and we disclosed that, and we put this in place. And then we also added, a shared well agreement, make sure everybody was disclosed. Yeah, Nancy says it should tell you on MLS too. It should tell you on MLS, but if the seller isn't aware, if the seller tells us, the agent, that something is as it is, this is on a public sewer, and we disclose that it's on public sewer, and we market it as being on public sewer, but then a buyer finds it out to be on a septic tank, that's where this form comes into place. If any information set forth in a disclosure becomes inaccurate or incorrect, we must promptly notify all parties and use this form to update whatever that is, date it, and have all parties sign it. And again, it's more cover your ass. It's more just letting everybody know, here is a change, not trying to hide anything. We called it out, we let you know, and you don't ever want to hear those words. If I had known this, I would not have closed on the property. I didn't find it during my inspection. We found out a month after we moved in, and we think it was clearly known. I mean, those are things you don't want to hear. But that's what this form does. So we're just making sure that we're using it correctly and putting that out there. With that being said, should we be having the seller sign this right away?
Well, it looks like, Chris, that this is the seller's property update. Maybe they took page 5 out, and now the seller's property disclosure is just
the 4 pages.
Just the 4 pages, but I can't find the seller's property disclosure.
Go to listing documents. Ours will be in there for certain.
Q&A.
Vicky asked, is there a place for signatures on page 4? Well, what we were just looking at is page 5. And yes, there are signatures on the bottom for all parties and initials.
And this is the seller's update.
Yeah.
So this is form revised 9/29/16. SPDR. SPDR.
Source property disclosure residential.
Yeah. Let's go back to interactive forms. Here it is. Oh, I had apostrophe S and didn't have a. It's tricky. Revised 2/20.
So this is the most.
So we're using that 2016 form. This is a 2020 form. Page 3, page 4. It's only page 4. So now they fixed that.
Well, if you see on the bottom too, it does. Ours says page 4 of 5. Theirs says page 3 of 4. Page 4 of 4.
Yeah.
So I think we need to update that and make sure. Let's see, what are the, we have another chat. If representing a buyer, how is the best way to remind a listing agent that once they open an inspection report that they are required to update SPD?
Not your problem, but.
Yeah, I mean, your buyer was disclosed by having the inspection report, and you provided the inspection report to them, and they've been disclosed of it. So, if the contract is going to cancel, that's a friendly reminder I try to use when I'm negotiating with them. Hey, and Mr. Seller's agent, just remember all of these problems that we're talking about here, should you go back on market, they're all going to need to be disclosed because these are not readily observable. So those are things you can remember. It's not our job to necessarily police them, but if you feel like you were wronged and their property goes back on market, you can take a look and try and report it, but that's a lot of energy that you're putting into someone else's problem. And we've got enough of our own on our own plate, and we should just be working on representing our buyers and sellers as best we can.
Yep.
So we should update new seller's property disclosure and add the update disclosure to our listing package. Yeah, Craig made a note. He's probably going to have Angelique update it so we have the most recent revision, which will be 4 pages. And if we have any updates to it, we will add that page 5, the seller's disclosure update form. And if you have any updates or changes, we'll have that as a separate document that won't be required. It'll just be optional that you can add and make whatever changes you need.
I just downloaded them. So I send it to Angelique and she'll get them to Dotloop and they'll format them and we're good to go. Actually, Dotloop doesn't have to format those. Those are ready to go.
And Joe,
Cool, guys. It is 9:30, Chris.
Real quick, one last to chat. Why is page 5 having to be signed and not signed at time of issue? And Joe, that's what I'm sure you've heard, that's what we're talking about. It's not going to be required anymore because it won't be a page 5. It's going to be a separate document. It'll just be 4 pages of the disclosure. But until then, keep doing what we've asked you to do with the 5 pages for now until that gets updated, just because it is a 5-page document and we want to make sure that we have all 5 pages signed. That just helps protect everybody and cover everybody. And when pre-certified, pre-loved is used, it eliminates these. Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Good. All right, everybody. Well, this is Friday. Oh, for all of our mothers out there, happy Mother's Day weekend coming up. Right? So it's rainy though. Just stay inside. God.
Social distancing.
Or social distancing. All right, everybody. Happy Friday. Thanks for tuning in.